Hey guys, this is a video on SLTs 3 and 4, which is going to continue what we did yesterday with circles. We're going to go ahead and pause at some points. Just listen closely, and I'm going to have you do a little bit of work and then check your answers. And we're just going to play and pause all throughout. So here's the warm-up. Go ahead and pause for about 3 minutes, and then as soon as you're done, actually this will only take about 2 minutes, and as soon as everyone is done, we'll play the video with the answers. So hopefully you got time to complete the answers. Sketch the locus of points equidistance from the points in the diagram. So a lot of you, I think, understood number 1 or A, but I bet you made a small mistake. So it is a locus of points equidistance from these 2 points would be a line that goes on forever in both directions, right in between the 2 points. But not only is it in between, it's actually the perpendicular bisector of these 2 points. So it had to have been at a right angle. Couldn't just go this way, because at this point right here would have been closer to this one than this point. Here, the locus of points with equidistance from this point would have formed a circle. In this one, if you were 5 units from the given line, there would have been a line here and a line here. And assuming that this was a line FG, even though it looks like it stops, we assume it goes on forever. Though if it's labeled FG, actually I take that back. If it's labeled FG, you would have to almost assume it's not a line, it's a line segment because it stops at F and G. Well, it does say line, so let's go ahead and assume it goes on forever. So it says that you have all the points. So these would give you the criteria, cover the criterion of being 5 units from this given line. But then also equidistance from F and G would look like this. That'd be a circle. So there would actually only be 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 spots that would be points on both the line and the circle. All right. So if you turn to page 9 in your packet, we didn't really number the packet, so you want to look for this page. Right here, you're going to find in a second, I'm going to have you pause it, but let me read the directions first. You're going to go through page 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's 6 problems between pages 9 and 10, number 1 looking just like this. And you're going to do it, and basically you have to make a sketch of a graph, you have to write an equation, you have to label the center, and you also have to label the radius of the circle, and you're always going to be given one of them. So go ahead right now, and as you're doing 1 through 6, I'd say give this about 6 minutes or so. Try to do all 6 problems. So now that you've got all 6 problems done, let's go through the answers. So here, I'm not going to draw the graph of each one because you can go ahead and use the information to sketch the graph. But here, the center of the circle would be at +3, -2, and the radius would be 3. Here, the radius is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the equation would actually equal 25 because it's the radius squared. And the center's at 0, 0. So it'd be x minus 0 squared, but we could just write that as x squared plus y squared. Number 3, if the center is at -1, it would be x plus 1 squared plus y squared, or y minus 0 would be fine, which equals 16 because it's the radius squared. Here the center is right here at, it looks like -7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -7, 5. The radius is 2 because I just counted up from the center. So this would be the equation. And 5 and 6. You could just have x squared or x minus 0 squared. Just using the center. If the radius 6, then it's going to equal 36. And here, This center would be over 2.5. I'm sorry, over positive 1/2, and then down 2.5. So it'd be right there. And the radius would be 1, so I'd go up 1, over 1, down 1, and left 1. And then I would draw a small circle right there. Radius is at 0.5, comma, negative 2.5. And the square root of 1 is still radius equals 1. For this problem, you not only want to go to page 13, which looks like this, but you also want to open up your spiral notebooks because we have to write down the midpoint formula. Midpoint formula is if you take the x-coordinates of the 2 points and add them and divide by 2, or essentially the average or the mean, that's the x-coordinate of the midpoint, and the same thing with the y's. So that I know in these problems you could just count over until you get to the middle, but so you understand the formula, this point right here is at negative 3, 3. And this point right here is at 2, 3. So 1x plus 1x, so negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 divided by 2 is negative 1/2. Comma, 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the midpoint of this one would be negative 1/2, comma 3. Go ahead and find the midpoint of this one. Pause it, and then as soon as you're done, you can play the video. So this one would be at, it looks like it is at negative 1.75. Comma 4. And then this point is at negative 1.75, comma, it looks like it's negative 2.5. So if you add these up and divide by 2, you'll get the midpoint would be at negative 1 and 75 hundredths. And 4 plus negative 2.5, it would be positive 2.5. That divided by 2 is 1.25. Go ahead and do 3 and 4, please, and pause the video. I'm sorry, do 3, 4, 5, and 6. Pause the video, and in about like 3 minutes, go ahead and play it for the answers. All right, here are the answers. Assuming that it looks like it goes 2, 4, the lines are 2, 4, and 6 for these guys. This is what you'd get if you average the x's and the y's. And you don't have to do 7 and 8. So the next thing you have to learn is the distance formula. Now, just a reminder, if you have a horizontal line and you wanted to find the distance, you could actually just count. So if this was over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the distance here would be 5. But if the line is diagonal, you can't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because 1 diagonally is not a distance of 1. The other thing you have to understand is that you can use the distance formula to find this point to this point, but you could also, if you really wanted to, you could use the Pythagorean theorem. Because if you connect a line between these 2 points, you could create a right triangle where you would actually know horizontally the length and vertically the length. And then you would know this right here and this length right here, so to be able to use the Pythagorean theorem to find this particular length. But there's a distance formula that you can use anytime you have 2 points. So assume that this point is 1, 3. And I'm just making that up. And this point right here is 2, 10. Let me go ahead and erase this part right here and move this out of the way. So the distance formula is to find the distance between 2 points. you would make one of these 0.1, so that could be x1 and this could be y1, and that would make this one x2 and y2. It doesn't actually matter if you made one of them x1 and the other one x2, as long as you're consistent. If this one is x2, this one is y2. If this one is x1, this one is y1. So you need the square root above everything, and it's x1 minus x2, or if you wanted to do x2 minus x1, that would have been fine, as long as you were consistent on the other one, plus y1. See, notice if we start with the x of 1, we have to start with the y of 1, y2 squared. Now, you're not allowed to square root these things individually, so you can't just cancel out the square roots. So all we're going to do is we're going to plug in the information. So 1 minus 2. Be careful, because if this x-coordinate was a negative, you would do 1 minus a negative 2, it would become positive. Squared plus, and then 3 minus 10, which would be negative 7, squared. Any square of any number would be a positive, so you get positive 49. And 1 minus 2 is negative 1, squared is 1. 1 plus 49 is 50, and then remember, the distance is the square root of that amount. So the distance would be either you can leave it as the square root of 50, or you could actually take the square root of 50. Go ahead right now and see if you can find the distance between these 2 points. And then pause it as soon as I'm done writing the problem. And then go ahead and I'll show you the answer in a second. So find the distance between those 2 points. So here's the answer. The distance would have been whatever root 277 is, which is about 16.6. This is important to leave it as this distance, because if you had the square root of 277, and remember in a circle formula, the radius would be squared. So if this happened to have been the radius, and you square something that already has a square root on it, you would know that you could just put 277 in your formula, in your equation. So what I want you to do right now is you're going to use, let me explain first, and then you're going to do a couple problems on your own. In this page, which we think is page 14, but we're not quite sure, you could go ahead and find this. Pause it if you need to find this page, number 9, 10. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. What your job is to write the equation of the circle if this is the given diameter. So let me explain to you how you would do this. So you have to find the center of the circle. The center is going to be halfway between the 2 points. So in this problem, it's a little bit easier because you could just count to find out what the diameter is and go halfway. But remember, if this was a line that was like one of these, you couldn't do that. So you are going to use the distance formula, but you're also going to use the midpoint formula, because we have to find what the midpoint is first. Let me go ahead and make this bigger, and we'll do the first one together. Sorry. All right. So to find the midpoint, we want to find out, now again, you could just count. So I'm doing it, this one I'm doing kind of the long way, but this point right here is at -2, 1, and this right here is at 2, 1. So if you find the midpoint, I'm going to average the two x's. So -2 plus 2 is 0, divided by 2 is 0. So the x-coordinate of the midpoint is 0. The y-coordinate, 1 plus 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So I know the midpoint is at 0, 1. And that also has to be the center of the circle, because the diameter goes through the center of the circle. So the next thing you want to do is to find the radius. Now here, we could just take half of the diameter. I could count from -2 to 2 and get 4 and divide that by 2 and know that the radius is 2. But if you didn't, you would have to find out, use the center, which we now know is at 0, 1, and let's use the distance formula. So this is, in a harder problem, you would have to do distance equals square root of 0 minus 2, so that's -2 squared. And this is just what we just did. And then 1 minus 1 is 0 squared is just going to be 0. -2 squared is 4. 4 plus 0 is 0. And the square root of 4, you actually get as 2, which we would have got anyway. So now I know the radius is 2. So based on all this information, knowing the center and knowing the radius, I can write my equation. Remember, to write an equation of a circle, it's x minus the x coordinate, so x minus 0 of the center, so it's just x squared, plus y minus 1 squared, and that equals the radius squared. So 2 squared is 4. So this would be the equation of this number 1. So your job is to go ahead and you're going to go through 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 before the end of class, and I'll throw up the answers, and you're going to write each equation that you get. Now, when you're done, you may start the homework. The homework is a worksheet that we'll give out to you towards the end of class or when you're done with this, but you have to be done with these and check your answers before you do anything. And remember, some of them you're going to need to use the midpoint formula and the distance formula. And remember, for these guys with the graphs, this is a 2, 4, 6, 8. So this point would not be 1, 2. It would be 2, 4. It'd be over 4, up 4. So go ahead and find the equation of each of them, and then I'm going to post the answers, pause the video, and when you're done, I'll have the answers to 9 through 14 up. All right, go ahead and pause the video and then play it when you're ready. All right, guys, so I'm going to run out of time in making this video. Here is the first answer for number 10. I'm going to ask that in the next couple minutes, you look at the person and talk to the person next to you or a couple people next to you and go over what you guys have for 11, 12, 13, and 14. I'll go over the exact answers on Monday, but make sure you're talking to the person. If you have something different together, let's figure out where you made a mistake or who made the mistake. And then the homework will be passed out to you, which also has to be done. But make sure if you did not complete 11 through 14, you do so, because these are important problems that use both the midpoint, distance formula, and understanding the equation of a circle. And then the homework's going to look something like this. This is what you're going to be handed out if you haven't been handed out already.